Here we are again, another Friday, foundational Friday to be exact, on the Enlightenment and Transformation Experience via Blog Talk Radio. As each and every Friday, I am your host, Yuya, Assaan-ANU, and always delighted, always appreciative to have this venue and this channel to be able to express these thoughts and these intentions in this time via recorded media and live media. That's for those listening in live now and those, of course, who enjoy the archives. So what we'll be discussing in this session is the idea of spiritual warfare and how spiritual warfare is actually engaged, activated, and discharged. But before we do that, I need to really address some just points of housekeeping for our new spiritual training students. And we will be having a live session Q&As this Sunday. As you notice, we typically have them twice a month, which I think I will be slimming down to once a month. So that, of course, means, come prepared. If we're meeting once a month, and that's also in light of the fact that I will be doing a live show twice a month as well, in conjunction to this blog talk show. I think I've told a few of you a couple of times that soon we'll be doing a live video show twice a month as well. So in order to properly make sure everything is given my attention at the priority level that it should, I'm going to slim a couple of things down. And in truth, if you come prepared and you're tight on your questions and you've actually questioned one another first before you bring it to me, in truth, you really don't probably need to query me as to everything that you would twice a month. Okay, so we're going to condense and intensify our studies and our work. So with that said, I'm also going to refer everyone again to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Sadulu House, as well as to the Sadulu House website, SADULUHOUSE.org. Okay. Head over there for your readings, your classes, to sign up. But also, there's a blog there. If anyone ever wants to share their spiritual experiences or anything that they would like me to comment on, that is the place to do it. In order to comment on that site, you have to sign up and register. Okay, and then your registration will be approved by one of the student admins, not necessarily me. So I have to say that because a lot of times people send emails in to any of the sites, whether it be Orisha Religion or the Sadulu site or the Facebook page, and they think they're talking to me. I do not answer those general email boxes. So I just want to kind of make sure everyone knows that your emails are sorted through and forwarded as need be. But for the most part, things can be answered and handled by those answering that general box. That's where and how it's done. Okay, so that's just kind of, a little insight into the machine of how we keep things moving and keep things pretty steady, so that way, your queries can be responded to in an orderly fashion. If it was left up to me, there will be a pile of unanswered emails, because there's just so much going on right now in the world of the ANU. Luckily and fortunately, we have a host of students. They have volunteered their time and their energy to keep the train moving forward. So with that, also, for anyone who's listening who is on Facebook and you are a registered student of the spiritual training, if you're in the spiritual training, you need to join the ANU Spiritual Training Facebook group. That is a closed group that is not open to the public, and it's only for those registered students. So there are things that you could speak about in there in terms of the lessons, primarily, that you wouldn't necessarily speak about on the Sadulu page or just in any other public forum. Okay, so that's another excellent way to stay in touch and, to keep in touch. And I do peruse that forum from time to time and offer insight and, things like that. Today is a very interesting day, interesting time, in that we have lost one of our sons, Malcolm Shabazz, who is the grandson of El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, otherwise known as Malcolm X. Very sad event. He was beaten to death, allegedly, in Mexico during an alleged robbery. And as some of you may know, he was incarcerated recently for traveling out of the country to Iran, and he had faced other scrutiny and investigation by the U.S. government based on his community activities. Okay, and interesting enough, he was murdered 10 days prior to the birth of his grandfather, Malcolm X. He was from Mount Vernon, and for those of you who don't know, I am also physically from the town of Mount Vernon, New York, and it's a very small town. But this is also the home place of some Malcolm X's family and his daughters, who was, and several other people. I lost a fellow Mount Vernonite, and I commiserate his transitioning with Pete Rock and C.O. Smooth. They reminisce over You, which was for Trouble T. Roy, another Mount Vernonite, who died about 20 years ago now. Yeah, over 20 years ago, actually. Just a very interesting time. With that, let's get on to spiritual warfare. For starters, all warfare is spiritual. So, though I may have titled this show Spiritual Warfare, as well as its accompanying article, which can be found on orishareligion.com, all warfare, as well as all representation, symbology, and games, most importantly, of war, are spiritually based, spiritually motivated. Okay? So, karate, kung fu, spiritual karate, spiritual kung fu, when you get to the higher levels of understanding martial sciences, you understand that it's really a battle of spirit against spirit, as expressed later on through flesh against flesh. So let's start with that understanding and in knowing that. So your hoodoo working or your voodoo working against another is no different than one's army and militia invading a country. It's just various ways to get something done, but ultimately you're both trying to get the same thing done using the force and might that is available to you. Okay. Most of the time when we're engaged in spiritual battle, unfortunately, depending on our level of understanding and our level of study, we're not totally aware of who or what we're engaged in this battle with. That's problematic. So one of the things we do is we go to people to receive divination and readings to find out the actual core target and source of our unpleasantness or our discord in our lives, right? Now, I'm going to give you a warning for those of you who feel that you're being attacked or you're going through something and you immediately call upon an archetype, Orisha or otherwise, to now defend or more so offend on your behalf. Let's take, for instance, we'll take Eshu, very strong and powerful Orisha energy. And if we told Eshu Elegba that we need that energy to clear out or remove any enemies that are in the path to our progression, our progress, or our ascension, right? Now, what happens if you later find out that you're the enemy to your own walk? What happens? Does that shoe say, well, you know what? I won't do this because in doing this, I may have to hurt you. No, because again, remember, we're dealing with indifferent energy. Doesn't matter. You gave it something to do something with, it's going to do it. Here's my payment. Okay, I'm going to take care of this for you. So if you're telling me that there's something that's blocking your road, a shoe, La Roye being the owner of the road. There's something blocking your path, blocking your road. I may not even let you know that it's your ego that's doing it. Why? Because you didn't ask me. So I have to remove aspects of your ego in order for you to ascend. Well, typically to do that, you have to humiliate someone if it's happening from an external place. It's you have to be humbled, right? Now, there are a million ways to be humbled, just as in there are a million ways to die. Okay, so this is one of the dangers when you immediately engage into a level of warfare without really studying the terrain and studying your supposed adversary or enemy. Okay, I would advise all of those who are listening who feel that they ever may find themselves engaged in a level of spiritual warfare or have been engaged in spiritual warfare to read Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Okay, it's one of my favorite books. Read The Art of War. It's not a long book, but it's a little cryptic, so it may take you a little bit to get through it. But it gives you a very good ideas about what you should do even prior to engaging in battle, right? Now, there's a lot of you also who are listening who you have this light and love philosophy and theology that you live by. You know, I'm not trying to harm anybody. I send everybody light and love. Now, I've already explained this one to you, you know, but many of you still come back with that same light and love nonsense. Why is it nonsense? Okay, because light and love is one side of the polarity, as I've explained to you before, whereas darkness and separation is another side of the polarity. Neither one is good for you, neither one is bad for you. But if you are stuck in one polarity, that is bad for you. So if you're going around telling everybody, I send you light and love, I send you light and love, then chances are you have no idea or clue what light and love is. Okay, and I've found personally that usually the people who use that type of phraseology are usually the people who are the most self-righteous and unaware of the damages and the harms that they cause other people. All right. So again, this is a form of spiritual warfare that we're speaking about here. I can blind you with light. I can burn your house down with light. I can cause your children to have skin cancer with light. Through connectedness, I can connect your child to a pedophile. I can connect your wife to a rapist. I can connect your husband to someone who would take his life. That's love, because love is a connecting energy. Love is a tsunami. Love is the Katrina floods. Okay. This is love. Why? Because this is expressing the divine will of the Almighty to bring things together. But sometimes we know we need to take things apart. We need to bring Ogun in and say, or Eshu, and say segregate, separate. Okay, this is a part of the formula. Oshun is only one half of the formula. Light and love, you're stuck in Obatala and Oshun. Okay, that's just one polarity. But then sometimes you need to bring in Eshu and Ogun. Separate, analyze, divide, okay? Because everything in life you don't want to be connected to. A lot of times your spiritual warfare is a product of you trying to connect with everything and everyone, sometimes through the incantations of your greetings or your salutations, and sometimes just through misunderstandings of your own spiritual station and how the world actually works. Okay, so spiritual warfare occurs on many different levels, but oftentimes what we're actually fighting are not only aspects of ourselves, but we're fighting things that we brought unto ourselves. Sometimes we decide to fight things that we're afraid of. Why? Because those things exist in the dark. So we're fearful because they're in the dark. Why? Because that's Eshu's realm, down there in the darkness. Or we don't want to go down there with Oduduwa, or we don't want to go down there with Olokun. We want to stay up here with Obatala and with Oshun and with Shango, without realizing that you have to go up and down. Very similar to the song I played in our last session, the United 8, getting uptown to get down. Right? You have to go up to get down. You have to go down to get up. All right. So when you're stuck in one polarity or you're stuck in one motion, then anything on the opposite polarity immediately scares you. And you now say, I have to engage in spiritual warfare, or I have spiritual enemies. The best thing that you could ever possibly do when you feel that you're under spiritual attack is to do rituals, incantation, incantations and chants for defense. Now, I'm speaking that to the majority of my listeners. Many of my listeners and supporters of this show are high-level priests and priestesses, so the response is a little bit different. But those of you who have not learned to generate and sustain a certain level of ashe or chi or power do not need to go on the offensive, because once you go on the offensive, you now have to deal with the karmic retribution that comes from that person or that entity's ancestral line. Right. So it doesn't even matter. So you may say, yeah, but I was right and this person was wrong. Remember, in the spiritual world, there's no sense of morality. That doesn't exist. It's one of the reasons why people still ask the question, if God loved us so much, why is there so much evil in the world? There's so much evil in the world because God does not love you so much, at least not in the form that you think love is. God is just, not fair. You think love is fair. No. You think God is fair. God is just. So there's just meaning that there's certain principles and certain cosmic laws that the energy that we know as to be God or the Almighty must live and abide by. That's why Eshu was brought forth. That's why Satan was brought forth. That's why Lucifer was brought forth. Why? Because these are the independent phenomenons, and they pivot on any step that they choose to. That's why we call them the trickster. Okay? But when we're dealing with the enemy of those higher energies, when we're saying light and love, what we're really speaking about is forced parameters. You can't do but so much in forced parameters. Okay, it's like going into court, and you know that the court you're going into is a criminal system, and that their actions are criminals, but you're trying to go by the book, but meanwhile they're not. Can you win? No, you absolutely cannot win. Okay, so that leads us to where I'm going next on this. A lot of times, and I apologize for my quick speech, but it's because there's a lot that I would like to condense into this particular show. And of course, as always, please go to the archives, re-listen, take your notes, so that way you can get it all, that you need to get. But moving right along, so when you're dealing with spiritual warfare, the first, or more so the second rule of thumb after divination, is never do anything or never send a spirit to do something that you would not do yourself. Never send a spirit, entity, or any other energy to do something for you that you would not do yourself. Very important. Okay, so don't send energies to curse people's lives or to even kill or harm people unless you have the temperament and the nature to do those things for yourself. If you do, okay, then you're already in that way and in that road. 95% of you are not like that. Okay, so you always typically want to do your spiritual warfare. You want to work from a defensive standpoint. Defense can be much more powerful. For those who want to understand the concept of that, watch the movie Ip Man, or Yip Man, really, which is IPMAN. It's a story about one of the masters of the system, Wing Chun. Okay, Wing Chun is a martial arts system, it's a kung fu system that was invented by a woman for a woman, and it really deals with defensive striking. So every time somebody hits you, the way that you're blocking or moving, they're actually getting hurt in the process of them trying to hurt you. Okay, that's how you always want to initiate or respond to spiritual warfare. So you do prayers and incantations that state, whoever tries to hurt me, hurt them. Whoever tries to fight me, fight them. But if you don't want to fight me, then everything's fine and ogie-dory. And we can keep moving along our life path and doing what we need to do. But if you choose to block my happiness or cause me harm in any way, just know that I have a force field of powerful entities girded around me. Okay, that's much more powerful than going on the attack, because once you go on the attack, you have to be prepared and strong enough to deal with the response. So a lot of times when people go to certain priests and priestesses to get certain work done for you, what that priest and priestess is not telling you is that this is not over with just me doing this step. Because even if the person doesn't respond in the physical, if they have any level of spiritual support, which most people on the planet do, because most people on the planet have ancestors, not the first of their line, if they have any level of spiritual support, there's going to be a kickback from this. So because there's a kickback from this, it's not necessarily just going to go to me. It's going to go to you as well, because you're a part of this ritual. Okay, so based on that, you always want to move towards a defensive position. Sometimes we're unable to identify exactly when we're being spiritually attacked as well. This is another issue. So we consider spiritual attack just to be something that happens in our sleep, or something that happens when we think we've offended a spiritual person, or we just think a spiritual person has it out for us, or our grandmother tells us that we've always had a family curse. This is not so. In actuality, for those of us who live on the planet, we're in a constant state of spiritual warfare. Constant state of spiritual warfare. Okay, the world is ran by the Pope, by the Vatican, right? And I know it feels like, wait, where did he just go with that? That's a totally different turn, but it's not. There has always been a political and religious agenda that's been purported throughout the world at the hands of certain elite parasitical powers on the planet. As long as that agenda is still active, you are in a perpetual state of warfare. Okay, so it happens even before you have the dream. It happens even in your understanding and your perception of your own spirituality. That is an act of warfare. We still have a certain fear and a certain fright when it comes to even indigenous spirituality as a result of the Spanish Inquisitions. So because of the Inquisitions, we still look at even though we may not overtly think about it, we still perceive spirituality a certain way because of the way that the pagans, quote unquote, were persecuted. All right? That's an act of warfare. How do we deal with that? Again, as I've spoken many times, dealing with the movie, dealing with medias, various movies do much more harm to you than that spirit or that hag or that duppy that you think has invaded your dreams or your bed at night. And I'm going to include something in here that people keep asking me for that, again, I really don't have a whole lot of interest in doing, but I'm just going to give you an example why. And this show will probably go beyond into archives. So if I cut off suddenly, just come back and listen to the archives and you can keep listening through. Okay. Because again, I have a lot of information, I want to give you, and, I want to condense it into the time that we have. So I may go a little further over. So if you've called in, just stay on the line. And if you are listening in from the internet, just come back and listen to the archives in a few minutes. But in any event, a lot of people have asked me to give a breakdown on the movie Django, right? And I have chosen not to do that. Certain movies I don't really do breakdowns on, and primarily because I want you to do your own breakdown on it before you begin to take on my ideas or my notions. I can't tell you the amount of times that I see my words quoted on social media and with no reference back to me, so I'm not even speaking about the plagiarism of it, but I'm speaking about my desire for people to have their own original ideas. That's more powerful than regarding what I say as gospel, right? God's spell, right? So let's get back to Django real quick. This was an act of spiritual warfare against a group of people, and many people did not pick up on that because they were so excited to finally see a quote-unquote slave movie where the enslaved turned on his or her oppressor, okay? But really quick, there's a couple things that a lot of people miss because, again, I recognize that we're in a perpetual state of spiritual warfare, so I look with a different eye. As far as the movie, I enjoyed the movie. It was great. Like the script, for cinematographic reasons, I really enjoyed the film. Okay. But aside from the entertaining aspects of the film, I knew also the attack that was being initiated through that particular work. Okay, real quick, one of the things that you noticed was that Django, who was supposed to be the star of the film, was pretty much the sidekick for the majority of the film. He was being led. He really didn't have a mind of his own. That one thing was being made clear. Even when certain kills were done, the only critical kill that, if you look at in the movie in Django Unchained, that Jamie Foxx or Django performed was the killing of Don Johnson's character. I believe his name was Big Daddy. Okay, that was really the only critical kill that he actually did. Throughout the movie, he really only just killed what we'll call low-level members of that particular society at that time. Basically, people who were very cartoonish and just like minions. Basically, the major kill, which was the kill of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, was done by Django's mentor, who that was played by Christoph Waltz. That was his name, Christoph Waltz. And the name of his character was Dr. King Schultz. Now, he was the one who pretty much called all the shots for Django. Even when it was time to kill Big Daddy, he said something like, "I'll give you the honors." Right? So I'm giving you permission to kill your oppressor. I'm giving you the permission to respond to your oppression. Now, another thing that a lot of people didn't pick up in the spiritual warfare of this movie was his name was Dr. King Schultz. Now, of course, most of the movie said Dr. Schultz, but he said Dr. King Schultz. Dr. King. Okay? Real easy on that one right there. Okay, so we have the Martin Luther King character. Okay, so now, and again, we're all dealing with the spiritual warfare. I don't want to do too much of the breakdown on it, but I just want to explain to you sometimes how certain things that you put your energy behind, there was a lot of energy behind this movie, is really an act of you stabbing yourself without even realizing it. And this is metaphysical and spiritual warfare that's being engaged against you. Again, like I said, he only really killed low-level characters, and even the manner in which he killed them was exaggerated beyond really belief. So you didn't really get a sense of the gruesomeness or the seriousness of the deaths, because it was done very comedically. Even when you had the scene when he did kill I keep calling him Don Johnson because I just know him from Miami Vice. But when he killed Big Daddy, you had this whole meeting of the Klan prior to, and they were cracking jokes about how it was hard to see through the hood, and one of the guy's wives had sold him, and blah, 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 blah. But so it was a whole funny thing. But what happens immediately is that he killed a Klan member, a funny, awkward Klan member to a degree. So it separated your ideology from him really killing an oppressor at the same time. He's killing a Klan member. Well, when's the last time you saw the Ku Klux Klan? Right? So it's almost like he killed a myth. You know, when's the last time you seen somebody walking around with a hood on? Okay. And it made other certain people who were watching the movie very comfortable in being able to see that murder or that kill, because they were able to say, well, that's not me. I'm not a member of the Klan. Right? I would never be a member of an organization like that. This is all products, and it may seem like it's social engineering, which it is on a certain level, as well as some of the other things that were said in the movie about the skull of the Negroid, and how the Negroid is more attuned to submission. You know, they were really talking about Planned Parenthood, otherwise known as eugenics. So there was a lot, again, to that movie. When everyone keeps asking for a breakdown because they were so excited about the film and what they felt the film represented without really looking at its source. You're dealing with someone, when we're talking about Quentin Tarantino, who has never shown any respect for the people who were mainly predominant in this film, and certain groups that would allege supremacy over other groups. This concept of supremacy was certainly affirmed, projected, and purported throughout the film, because again, our main character, our hero, Django, still needed permission from a quote-unquote relative of his former enslaver in order to make any type of serious move. And ultimately, he made no serious move. Ultimately, he just handled low-level, comedic, trash-like characters throughout the film. So, this not being a movie breakdown session as we've done in the past, and I will do again. What I'm explaining to you here is different forms of spiritual warfare that sometimes we find ourselves engaged in without even realizing that this is what we're engaged in. So what happens is you now take these energies home with you. You watch these things, and like I taught you before, when you go to movies, you have what's called the suspension of disbelief. And that means your mind, the way your mind works, and this is real, this is biology. Your mind doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and what quote unquote really happens, because in truth, you're imagining all of this. It's just different levels of the dream, basically. So when you go to a movie and you see a Django, your mind really thinks that's happening. That's why some people, they get excited, they yell, they scream, they clap, they cry, because they really believe this is what's going on. This is the suspension of disbelief. If you disbelieve, you don't know, this isn't really happening. It's a movie. But during that time, that mechanism in you is stopped, it's suspended. Okay. And obviously those, but knowingly those who create these films, those in the Hollywood, be mindful that the Hollywood is the wood that was always used in tradition, in occult tradition, to make wands with. Hollywood. It was said that even Merlin used Hollywood exclusively. Now, that's a whole nother story, the whole Merlin thing. But this was always a wood that was used for quote unquote spiritual purposes. So many people say, oh, they called it Hollywood because they have holly trees all around the studios. No, that's not true. This is a cult. Okay, with your movies and your music, even, which we'll get into in our later session when we deal with music, are filled with spiritual warfare. Okay. So now, based on that, we've got an understanding of some things. We first know that there should always be divination put in place so that you can understand who and what is causing the disruption. If it's yourself, then obviously it's a different way that you need to go about it, as opposed to if it's an external energy. We also dealt with understanding how that spiritual warfare can come in and how you should respond. Should you go on the offensive or should you go on the defensive? 95% of you should go on the defensive, and you should do that pretty much daily. You always affirm to the energies that you work with, fight those who fight me. Now, this goes to and of course we dealt with, again, the movies and things where things can sneak in, even things that we praise and applaud. Now, I'm not putting down the movie Django, not that I feel like I have to support it, because I don't. So just so you know, but I'm just letting you know, as a movie, it was a cool movie. It was a good movie. But because I'm aware and my third eye is open, I'm aware of what's going on underneath the presentation and what they were actually still saying and still doing. In fact, it was an extremely racist movie. Okay, and we're not speaking about the racism because they used the N-word. That had nothing to do with it. That was a distraction. So you would keep your eyes on that and not notice what they were really doing, which was purporting, supporting, and affirming supremacy of a certain ethnic group. Okay, now, which is untrue. But anyway, so one of the things that you need to keep in mind, too, is the tools of spiritual warfare. I've heard a lot of people speak about black candles, right? And everyone has this thing with black candles, especially the light and love people. Light and love people will always say, I don't use black candles. I don't have black candles in my house. It's because they don't really understand it. We use various colors based on our cultural connection with those colors. So for some will tell you, when you're doing underhanded work, use a black candle, but that color may not represent that in your culture. For instance, you're told in certain cultures, use a pink candle when you want affection. Okay, but pink may not mean that in your culture. The color for affection in your culture may be blue. It may be silver. Right? So ultimately, the color of the candles that you use for various rituals don't have as much to do with the effectiveness and the power of the ritual that you may think. My contention on that, and it's just me, and I'm sharing this with those who are my students and supporters, is that fire is fire. So I don't care if you burn a candle or you burn a pile of leaves. Okay, fire is fire, and what you're giving is the ashe of the fire, the power of the fire, and what it represents. That's more important than the actual candle. What type of candle? Is it a soy candle? Is it a beeswax candle? These are things, the beeswax and all of that, that has another effect. That has another effect on the spiritual entities, but it doesn't necessarily have effect on the nature of the fire itself. Now, what the fire actually does is, one of the things it does is it invites your protective energy to whatever it is you're symbolizing through the flame, right? So this is when we get into the colored candles. Now, why would I burn a red candle? Well, technically, you're not burning red flame. You're burning fire, and then you're inviting those entities that are coming in through the fire to that color of red. Same thing with the black. You're burning black, and then you're inviting those entities to come into the color of black. But burning a black candle does not mean that you're doing quote unquote witchcraft. Again, this has to deal with our perceptions, our trauma that we're still holding over from spiritual persecution that's going on in this country and throughout this region. We still have this ideology that if you say, and even if I am doing witchcraft, so what? I've already taught you what the ujet is, or the wajet is, or the sacred witch. This is a good thing. If you're a witch, that's excellent. That's wonderful. But again, the warfare that you're engaged in has even changed the perception that you have of certain sacred energies, sacred concepts, and even sacred words like witch. So as a note, keep in mind that black is an absorptive color. Okay, so even when you're burning a black candle, you're not always necessarily burning it to go after someone militaristically, but you may be using it to absorb a negative energy, which is usually why you should be using it. You use the color black for reversal of attacks that have come to you. So you light your black candle and you give it to Eshu, Ilegba, and you say, return whatever has been sent to my home or to me with the intent of damage, return it from where it came from. Okay, you can also burn black candles or even put black ilekes upon the altar of your egun. Black ilekes are for egun, and black candles, again, going into the mysteries of the darkness of the womb where things are brought out. This is a good place to be. White candles have another purpose. Okay, there's a reason why, this show is entitled Enlightenment and Transformation. I chose that, or I should say the channel, I chose that terminology because I felt it really encompassed all of what we need to be doing while here on the planet, going to the light and going to the dark. Okay, which is again a trap of polarity, but we did that on another show. I think that was sex, mixed martial arts, and polarity, something like that. But in the event, when we're speaking about protection, there are various tools and methods that you can utilize, and notice what most of you are waiting for. When's he going to tell us what to do? But as always, I have to give you the ideology and the spirit and the mindset that must come with whatever you do first. For deeper tools, that will come in phase 3 of the Anu spiritual training. Just so you know, for those students and those who are prospective students, if you haven't signed up for phase 1, come on in and get started. But in any event, certain things that are wonderful and perfect for protection, things that you can do around your home when you feel like you're being attacked. You can use nails. Okay, one method that's real effective is to take a lot of nails, 21 to be exact is best, and to take that, just put it in a glass jar and put some urine inside of that jar and bury it in your yard. Okay, that's an old hoodoo technique. But even though it's hoodoo, very interesting enough, that's also a Yoruba Ogun ritual. Yeah. So you see how things carry over. It's a very effective ritual, though. Again, but as you're doing it, and you can even use razors as a replacement for the nails. So you can use nails, or you can use razor blades, or you can do a mixture of the two of them. But again, think about what you're giving when you're putting the urine on this. You're giving an offering of blood first of all, in your own personal ashe. When you're using the nails or you're using the razors, think about what this symbolizes. Okay, think about what that symbolizes to the spirit world. Nails and razors. Okay, you're cutting. Obviously, they're weapons of protection. You didn't have to bury a big sword or anything like that in your yard, but it's the thought, the intention, and the symbology behind the thing that is most effective. Again, just like a little thing like someone saying, "My name is Dr. King Schultz." Very effective, right? They need a big blaring sign for that to have its effect on you. And it did have its effect on you. Okay, so again, we're going back to methodology and mind state when we're dealing with spiritual warfare. Now, one of the things that you always want to make sure you do is you study. One of the greatest defenses that you can have from spiritual and physical attack is increased spiritual intellect. Okay, because what happens is that things that would choose to attack you. Now, remember, I'm differentiating an attack from something inside of yourself that's self-regenerative. You know, your own ego, your own stubbornness, your own anger, your own resentment, your own jealousy. These things that separate you from your true protection and your soul. So I'm speaking about external energies that may be sent towards you, or external energies that may just be in your space. Aside from home cleanses and baths, which I get into in not only Grasping the Root of Divine Power, my book, which I urge you to pick up a copy of if you don't have, Grasping the Root of Divine Power. You can get it on Kindle format as well, but also in I think that's lesson 10. My students can correct me. It's either lesson 9 or 10 in phase 1, where we actually get into a real nice home cleanse that I designed, as well as a way to situate and format your home so that there's harmony within the house. Very key for spiritual warfare. If you're getting ready to engage in battle with someone, you have to first set up a place, a headquarters of harmony to operate out of. Okay, so you want to start positioning things in your home where you have certain elements in certain directions. To the north side of your home, you should have something that's representing fire. To the south, you should have something that's representing the earth. To the east, you have something that's representing light. To the west, you have something that's representing water. And in the north, you can also put air as well. Okay, so these things, again, now create an environment. Your throne should always be in the east position. That's your seat of power. Okay, that's where you can do your meditations when you go into spiritual war. From the east, at your throne of power. But more importantly, as I was saying before, if you're being accosted from external outside energies, your greatest defense is to always rise above them. Okay, now I don't just mean by saying, oh, you know, I wish you well on your journey. Not that mess. I'm speaking about rising above them in terms of your electromagnetic energy, rising above the particular entities. Disruptive spirits and entities that would try to block your path exist on a certain level within reality. We call those the astral planes. These entities can only get to energies that are lower, that live more, quote unquote, we'll call in the dark. So the more you raise up to your places of enlightenment, the more distance you put between yourself and them. Now, in order to raise up to the higher places of enlightenment, you of course first have to go through the dark and battle and deal with the demons that you need to. So your study is actually one of your greatest tools of spiritual warfare. Keep on your shrines and your sacred spaces and even around you symbology of defense, whether it be shields, whether it be knives, which I'm a big fan of, razors, swords, anything, even books. And very importantly, which a lot of people leave out, get smart. When you want to go to war, you want to go to battle, do it wisely, do it intelligently. You know, I'm going to do a show coming soon, so let this be a preview to a degree on what you do when you're dealing with court situations, when you're dealing with police brutality, and you have to battle this fictitious entity called the state. Do not gather tools of spiritual warfare in order to fight one another. Do not be like Django Unchained and your biggest triumphant battle is with Stephen, and you never really actually go to the source of your you're discontent. So your anger and your actions are not righteous. Okay, so with that, that is our show. As always, I am positively Yuya Assaan-ANU. I'm thankful for your presence and participation in this space and time. Make sure you guys head over to ANU Nation as well, ANUNATION.org, and sign up for the newsletter so that way you can know what's going on, as well as when I put up the discounts for the classes. Until next time, Hotep.